No, Tanya, it doesn't hurt. It's a very gentle procedure, so it's a very comfortable procedure. But, you know, it's really interesting because people don't want to discuss this part of their body, and yet it's a very important function. We go to the bathroom every single day, and we'll openly discuss sex and you know, just about any topic regarding sex. But you know, when was the last time someone discussed their bowel movements, and yet it's such an important part of their body.
That's just not like a part of society that you'd really think about. Who are the type of people that would need these therapies? Is it, I mean, is it the everyday person, or is there certain people?
Anybody that has had a typical Western world diet consisting of meat, an abundance of meat, any flesh foods, refined carbohydrates, processed foods, dairy, any of those foods that you've eaten, you can be sure that your body is in a state of auto-intoxication. What that means is that there's a buildup of impurities, toxins, poisons, free radicals, carcinogens that are in the body, causing the body to be diseased and sick. And it's basically just aging the body, rotting the body, and it's important to cleanse that. And you see in our society people walking around with pot bellies. You can go to Vaughn's or Ralph's and see that everywhere, right?
Right.
Well, granted, some of that's fat, but also some of that is impacted matter. The average American is walking around between 5 and 15 pounds of sewage in their colons.
And just from the buildup of ever since their childhood, does it go clear back?
You see, the foods that we eat, such as that I had mentioned, are foods that have very little fiber, if any at all. And so there isn't any fiber pushing the sewage through and out of the body. As a result, it builds up and builds up. So you come across people with bad breath, with foul body odor, that are constantly having headaches, all kinds of diseases, because disease and death begin in the colon. You need to clean out the colon before you get healthy. And I don't care what else you do. I've seen people and talked with people that tell me, gee, I don't understand what's going on, Milan. I have started a new diet with eating a lot of vegetables and fruit. I'm taking vitamins and minerals, the best money can buy. I'm doing a new exercise program. Why don't I feel better? You know, why am I still tired? Why am I still feeling aches and pains? Well, you've got to clean out the sewage, the buildup of the matter that's accumulated throughout the years.
Wow. Are there any side effects after this procedure?
None whatsoever. However, if you do a cleansing program, which involves taking cleansing herbs and changing your diet, modifying it, it's a very simple program, you can experience what we call healing crisis. What that is you could feel lightheadedness, a little dizzy, maybe have a pimple or a fever, runny nose, just a lot of different things can take place. And you have to realize and understand that what is actually happening is the body is kicking in to get rid of the impurities, and that is ultimately in the bloodstream, which will cause you to have those kinds of healing crises.
Right. What do you tell your clients to eat? Because you've mentioned, you know, well, we eat everything that you said, so what do they eat?
Yeah. Well, they prepare 2 days before their cleanse. They will eat fruits and vegetables, or they can do juice fasting.
We're going to get to that next. Yeah.
Which is what I recommend.
And that's what you recommend.
Right.
Now, does it take longer to cure a problem that they have than, say, they just went to a doctor and got a prescription?
Well, a colon hydrotherapy we're not in the business to cure people. And we have to be real careful with that word, curing. But we do know for a fact through the testimonies and the thousands of people that I have treated that they have felt better. And by feeling better, I'm talking about a higher energy level. Their memory seems to improve. Their condition seems to subside from the letters that I have received, and I've received hundreds of them.
Could you share maybe a testimony of one of your people that have been helped with their problem through this?
Well,
maybe with drugs?
I think what stands out in my mind, and I think it's very profound and almost unbelievable, is people that have done social drugs, marijuana, cocaine, and drugs like that. If they do a cleanse, and this is only if they're doing fasting with juices or distilled water fasting, they will find that they can actually feel the high of that marijuana that they smoked years ago. They can actually feel it comes into the blood. The substance has stayed in the body all those years, and so when they start to cleanse, and they'll experience a high, not as intense, nonetheless, they will have that same feeling of just feeling like they're stoned, you know. And also, I had a man who was an alcoholic, and he had not drank for like 12 years, something like that, and he did a cleansing program. He said he could actually smell the alcohol come out of the pores of his skin, and he had not touched a drink in 12 years. I had another lady who was had been a heroin addict 8 years previously, had not done heroin in 8 years.
And it was still in her body.
When she did her cleansing, she could actually smell the heroin come out of the pores of her skin. Now, I don't know what heroin smells like, but apparently there's a unique odor to heroin.
What makes them want to come to you? How do they, since we don't usually hear about this, how do they know?
Word of mouth. Word of mouth.
Word of mouth?
Yes. So when someone will say, you know, they'll be complaining about constipation, or, you know, the list is endless of what a kind of ailment, and someone may say, hey, you ought to try going to see Milan Chessman. She does internal cleansing, and it really works. I felt great. I feel great after that cleanse. And so, if you go to your doctor,
yeah, what would a doctor say?
If you go to your doctor and you tell him that you want to have colon hydrotherapy, he'll say, that doesn't work.
Why would they say that?
You know, I've heard a pastor say one time, Tanya, prejudice is when you're down on something you're not up on. And if someone says that colon therapy doesn't work, I would like to know if that person has ever done any colon therapy, has ever tried a cleansing program, because it does work. But they don't. And you know, if they do encourage their patients to do cleansing, they could lose their license. Did you know that? Because it's not an acceptable method of treatment within the medical profession. The medical profession does two things, basically. They write out prescriptions and they do surgery. And what we do is a preventative measure. It's in preventative medicine. In the area of holistic health.
Right.
So it works.
It works. How many treatments does it take before all the impurities are actually out of the body?
Well, you can't put a number on people's bodies.
Everybody's different.
Right. Everyone is different. And, you know, it depends on your age and depends on your past history as far as medication, social drugs, diet is concerned. All that has to be taken into consideration. However, I generalize by saying 10 treatments. Sometimes less, sometimes more. I had a client that did 13 treatments. This gal was sent to me by a medical doctor who diagnosed her as having 2 types of amoebas. And so she did the colon cleansing to rid herself of the amoebas. Lo and behold, the 13th treatment, she passed a tapeworm. She passed a flat noodle that looked suspicious. She had it analyzed in a laboratory from her medical doctor, and it turned out to be a beef tapeworm. So parasites and worms are very common.
Yeah,
some medical doctors believe 80 to 90% of the American people have parasites or worms of one sort or another. So it's very, very common.
Milan, how do you then practice what you believe with all that?
Well, it started 23 years ago. Personally, when I was in my early 20s, I was the kind of young lady that would go to the bathroom once every 5 or 6 days. I had this
only 5 or 6 days?
Once every 5 or 6 days. And I had this little tummy on me, and I went to the doctor. I was not overweight, but I went to the doctor, and I asked him why, and he said, well, for you, that's natural, and that's normal. Well, now I know that it isn't normal, because I'm 54 years old, and I go to the bathroom twice a day now. So, and if your constipation is a progressive condition, it's not something that gets better with age, it gets worse. So you remember there's like 52 different types of laxatives on the market. Laxatives are your #2 drug sold in the United States. So there is a problem. Every other anus that we see has a hemorrhoid attached to it. And I know this is talking personal. I know some of you people are offended by it, but listen, this is the facts.
Right.
And we need to deal with it head on, and we need to realize that disease begins in the colon. We have to clean this part of our body. There's nothing, as I said earlier, Tanya, there is nothing nicer than the smell of a body that is clean.
See, I never ever realized that. Like, we never would talk about that. It's just a normal everyday conversation.
But we're also full of perfumes and colognes and deodorant
like we were
mouthwashes and toothpaste and everything.
Hairspray, all that smelly stuff, huh?
Yeah, to get rid of the odors that are offensive.
Right.
But the natural odor of someone's body that is clean is lovely, and that's the way God intended it to be.
Exactly.
So,
now, moving into another area we just kind of touched up briefly, and I said we were going to talk about that later, is fasting. Now, this is something that I can't imagine doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I would feel like I was starving. And so what is fasting?
Well, fasting is just abstaining from food and drinking. I promote vegetarian or juice fasting, vegetables and fruit juices. And it's basically allowing the body to rest. And when you do juices...
Rest from eating. Huh.
Well, rest, and when the body stops eating, you see it requires energy to digest food. Remember that. So when the body stops, when you're not eating, the digestive system stops working, and what happens after that is the body immediately kicks in to rid itself of the buildup of toxins and poisons. So when that happens, then your breath will be foul, you'll get a headache, you might get some kind of lightheadedness or weakness. Expect it. But I do not advocate fasting without being under the direction of a medical professional who understands and promotes fasting. It's a wonderful way of really reversing the aging process.
So somebody shouldn't just start fasting if I decide to do it tomorrow without any supervision.
No more than a
They
day.
would come to see you. Or
If you do it one day fast, you can do it fine on your own. And doing juices, and people say, well, gee, I'm going to starve to death. Listen, you don't starve to death.